A lot of you were there yesterday, so really you should all leave, basically. Because, you were served the spiritual subpoena already. And to me, this is more about direction and format. The direction that I was introduced to with spirituality was I was looking for something, and there were many paths to direct me and to work on that which was obscuring me as I was attempting to get to my goal, so to speak. And a lot of it had to do with doing and having, with the hopes that I'd enter a state of being somewhere along the line. And as I went through it, I would feel better about myself because I was doing something good for a change and so forth. And there's a lot of that available. This message is more about not a description of what is, but really a description of what we're not. Yeah? And by seeing or having an understanding of what you're not, it leads to a finding out of what you are. Yeah? And it doesn't seem to go with the basic logic that we're usually driven by or directed by, but I think the logic is insane in a sense. And this is seamless. Once this logic becomes clear to you, it never varies. It's got a beautiful seamlessness. And because instead of looking for what you are from what you're not, you see what you're not from what you are. Yeah? And it's just that switcheroo, because something's going on, but it's sort of just misdirected in a way. So or I was anyway. And I have nothing against practices or anything like that, because if you're there, they're valuable. But I like the idea that most systems, if they're not working, like they say in the Course in Miracles, what can a failed system show you? It can show you that it's failed. And that to me is the value of doing a lot of stuff, because it will reveal to you something's off. And after you can question, and usually the system itself has its own protection, because the person, or whatever you want to call it, that's in the system will turn and blame themselves for the system's failures. So you'll believe you haven't done enough, you didn't meditate enough, you should have stayed at a longer retreat, and it basically protects your investigation of the system center, which is self-centeredness. Yeah. So there are certain statements from certain masters that really captured my attention, and they're like the gift that keeps on giving, and they just resonate so completely with me. And one of them is from Ramana Maharshi, and if you've read his works or people that wrote about him, this idea is cast as the problem or the greatest mystery. So there's an emphasis on this, and it's in most of the writings about him. And it goes like this. And to me, this is the conception of the mental state, and that is presupposing of a non-existent thing, which I would say is the body, yes? So the presupposing of a non-existent thing as basically existing, yeah? And then wanting to get salvation for the non-existent thing. And then he goes on and says, if this is in place, your spiritual practices themselves will be used to reinforce the non-existent thing. How can they destroy it? Yeah. Now, to me, that was a shoe that I put on, and it fit. And it actually explained years and years and years of activity. And I would say I was basically, the format of this, looking for some relief, was captured by that statement. I was starting from a false reference, looking for something from the false reference. And you may be able to find a lot of stuff that isn't you, but you can't find what you are. You can't study what you are. You can't know what you are. You can have an understanding of what you are, but you can know what you're not. You can study what you're not. You can have an experience of what you're not. Yeah? And in that experience or understanding or knowing what you're not, it may give a sense of finding out what you are, which is the seeing that precedes everything. If you want to call it awareness, to me it doesn't need a name. It's just that sense that if you take anything as far back as you go, you hit a point. In other words, there's a sound. A lot of people, I walked in this room today, there's a very big hum in the room, not in the room, but the silence is very loud, yeah? So you're sitting in here, and that silence, that loudness, you'll hear, let's say, a heartbeat, but the heartbeat is after that sound, yeah? And then maybe the blood pressure is after that sound, or the breath. And I haven't seen any sound that's prior to this sound, this vibrational frequency sound, and it's more constant than any sound. Yet what is there before that sound that's hearing it? Yeah. That which is before that sound can't be heard. It can't be seen, it can't be felt, it can't be tasted, it can't be touched. That's what I am. Yeah? I can't know it from what I'm not. So this just turns it around. Instead of looking for what you are from what you're not, you see what you're not from what you are. It's a simple invitation. But if that placement of having the horse before the cart works, then the whole journey is determined by that placement, yeah? Now, as Zen would say, you see blue is blue, and red is red, and green is green. You're not looking for what can't be found. Everything is very freaking clear. And to me, cast in time, I would call it a last answer, yeah? Which is an incredible answer because it negates any need for any answers. Yeah, that's a beautiful answer. And to me, there's only been two things in my life that are worthy of the term solution, and that was getting struck sober. Yeah, where the point is, for 30 years, I haven't had a strong thought or a feeling to get loaded, where before that point, it was the dominant influence in my experience. Yeah, and then this message, because this message is truly about nothing. And if you say with it, it becomes everything, yeah? And there's not much you need to add on to nothing. You don't need more nothing. And to me, it's an invitation. And I've been provoked, and wasn't planning this whatsoever. I was just trying to be helpful in recovery, and then we made a mistake by putting out a website, and then people started getting in touch with me, and I saw a whole other illness, which is spiritual seeking. And at least the alcoholics draw so much attention to themselves, there's a chance of something happening, but you can die the slow death of 800 meetings like this. And no one's going to stop and tell you, you got to get up and leave. They'll take your check for the next retreat, and they'll reserve your spot and stuff like that, and it goes on and on and on. And it would be fine to me if that horse was in front of the cart, but if it isn't, then there's, like non-duality, if there's an urge to take advantage of it, it's not available in a sense. You can't use it as a skillful means. You can't apply it. You can apply the understanding, but it's not that workable, yeah? There's a certain attitude and outlook about it, which is you're truly disarmed, yeah? And then it's a fact. That's all it is. Yeah? You can be in agreement with it, or you may not be in agreement with it, but it doesn't change the factness of it. There just is not two. There isn't you and me. There isn't a subject-object. There isn't this or that. This is just a dreaming, in a sense, yeah? Mm-hmm. And with that understanding, it's not an understanding, it's really vision, you know? A view is an understanding. Vision is actually seeing, yeah? Which is always available at all times. And it can infuse an understanding, but an understanding doesn't produce the seeing because it's unproduced. It's always available at all times, yeah? But that seeing affirms itself. You're not looking for outside authorities. You don't need any blessings. You may never read a book again. And you, in a sense, you'll feel like you have a 0% of spiritual bone in your body. It's totally normal, incredibly normal. And like if I was seeing where I am today when I was younger, that this was the driving force of what my seeking. I did not want to be like this. Ordinary dog shit awareness, excuse me, or dog poop awareness. I didn't want that at all. I wanted it to be special, and I wanted me to be there. I wanted to have the awakening. I want to have the realizations. And in my experience, see, there's realizations like this, which are pretty easy, you know, so you feel clearer, you feel more love, but you're there, yeah? But this is trippy because it goes like this, and you're seen, yeah? You're seen. So you get a hit of what's in front of the camera from behind the camera, never to be fooled on a certain level again. And then you see that which is front of the camera can never arrive at behind the camera, because it's just a projection of that which is behind the camera. This can't get back because there's no back in a sense, yeah? So you see what's in front of the camera and what's behind the camera. The false reference is assuming it's behind the camera. It believes it's the Alpha and the Omega, and it's not correct, you know? And it doesn't generate any real sense, so it has to be remembered. So the mental processes, which I call like the thinking, the perceptions, the memories, picture or hold us as a body. So anytime the attention and interest that this is goes up into there, it catches those processes in the act of being identified as a long-lasting, independent, separate entity. You know, claim to be the doer, the thinker, the haver. And it's just repetitive, constantly, to the point that mind pictures itself as a body. It assumes it's a body. And once that happens, suddenly that which comes after is now before, and for it to be the before has to be seemingly forgotten. And now you start looking for it. Yeah, but you don't see if the after really could look for it, and if we look in the right direction, maybe, possibly, but it looks for it's made the before after, so it's looking from here as if it's going to arrive there. That's all, isn't it? I bet you there's 800 years of spiritual practice in this room, and yet you're still here. Something's off. You know? It's an incredible business, because like if I was in the furniture business and you ordered a couch, it was supposed to come April 4th, and it wasn't there by April 6th, you'd flip out. But some of us bought the, it may happen in lifetimes. You're waiting for the delivery and for lifetimes. You know what I mean? You just want to sit down and be comfortable now, don't you? Jeez. So this, and you can't make much out of it. It's a bad career choice. Really. If I was showing you something, we could have a 3-day event. But I'm just inviting you. And I know already you've been served the spiritual subpoena. And the beautiful thing I've learned over the time, I never talk to you about it. I talk to it about you. Yeah, because there's a quality that you are already. That's where the message is being directed. To talk to you about Buddha nature goes nowhere. But to talk to Buddha about you, that goes somewhere. Because if the Buddha hears the message, it may say, hey, I'm not that. And then really, that's that. But if you hear the message, it just gets more and more confusing, to the point where we're trying to be a non-self as a self. We want to have the qualities of being a non-self, but as a self. Yeah. So there's a great Zen master, Hoang Po, one of my favorites. He says this. First of all, he clears the whole game board by saying whatever can be perceived can't be perceiving. So we're all off on it right there, yeah? Because you're perceiving this cannot be perceiving. I'm perceiving that cannot be perceiving. Yes, so that's gone, that's finished. Then he goes, hey, you cannot use the Buddha to seek the Buddha. Yeah? You can't use light to seek light. You can't use mind to seek mind. You can try for eons, nothing's going to happen. Pretty incredible, eh? So, but Huang Po wasn't a sadist. He wasn't talking to Steve and going, Steve, you can't use the Buddha, seek Buddha. He was talking to the Buddha that Steve is, yeah? He was hoping that the message would get through before it was claimed by your mental processes, which will neuter it. It'll be a stillborn. It'll be a concept. It'll be dead, basically. But I believe, humbly, it's going to get through. And if it gets through to that, which is the Buddha, it may entertain the possibility I may not be that, yeah? And then when it starts entertaining peace, it'll be from that, not as that, yeah? You'll have freedom from that, not as that, yeah? And when that happened with me, it explained all that I had been doing, which is I've been trying to get out of self as a self. Yeah. I was traveling from a false reference, assuming it was true, and then from there looking for the truth. Yeah? But the truth was already obvious. This is a false reference. All that's necessary is see what I'm not. And in the seeing what I'm not is the finding out of what I am, which is the seeing. Yeah? And that logic is different than the logic that's presented in practices and processes. But this logic is seamless. It continues with that same logic. Yeah? All the way through. Yeah? To the point where the only possibility that's available to us is being it. And in fact, we are right now. We may not think so, but the thinking comes after the being. The thinking is of time, the being is not of time. And that which is not of time is not affected by anything that comes after. It's like the sky today, yeah? Tons of clouds are going to appear in the sky. Planes are going to go through the sky. There can be 4th of July explosions in the sky, but none of them will affect the sky. That's what mind is like. It's been untouched this whole time. And if someone has an awakening, whatever, and that's just like a free sample, you know, here, of what already is. If that happens, it usually has to coincide with it's always been this way. I mean, it totally negates any reality you had given anything that's ever freaking happened. It just negates it like if it was never there. It was like, oh, it's always been this way. Now, does that establish here? Maybe, maybe not. But it's never not forgotten. It's never forgotten. It's there. Because mind is a... Like I ran into you ever hear of Ramesh Balsekar? He was an old guy. I wanted to see him before he died, so I went to India in like 2000 or something. And about a couple months ago, a lady sent me an old video of his. I wondered why, and she said, listen to this. So I was listening to it, and then he starts talking to someone, and it's me. I was in the audience. And he says, well, what do you do, Paul? And I go, not much. And then he goes, and I realized that's me. And then he started to talk to me about the impersonal presence, which is always available all the time, and the personal presence, you know, making a way of contrast. And he says, there's no need for the personal presence to remember the impersonal presence. It's sort of like, if you have a house and you go to work, do you think about, do I have a house? Do I have a house all day? No, there's an assurance you have a house, and then you're at work, working, yes? Mm-hmm. You're not thinking, I have a house, yeah? That's faith in mind. It's beautiful, so you're not wasting any time. This has codes. This has a sense of free will. To try to convince it doesn't have free will is pointless. Because you're going to go to a Starbucks and you're going to order a mocha when you were thinking you were going to get a soy latte, and you're going to feel like there's free will. Why waste time trying to change that which is always changing? Just see what you're not. And seeing what you're not, you'll be established in what you are. And what will happen is this will get the greatest benefit of it, which is acceptance. Mm-hmm. You're freaking, because if I take this to me, it's like an urban renewal project that never freaking ends. It's always got to be compared, additions, work. But even our own consciousness, our own conscious contact of seeing, hearing, feeling, tasting, touching doesn't demonstrate any thought or effort. How could you expect thought and effort to take you there? Did any of us take a seeing lesson today? You know, seeing? Have you broken out in a sweat by seeing, hearing, feeling, tasting, touching? Were you seeing the worst day of your life and were you seeing the best day of life? Yes, there's no volition in it at all. That's us. That's our activity here. That which we're taking ourselves to be comes after. There's the consciousness in contact, and then 7 seconds later, they say, the sense of self arises as the narrative, and the sense of self implies that it was before everything, and you feel like you're conscious. Yeah, that's this. Now the seeing is seemingly forgotten, and the emphasis is on seer and seen, and there goes the narrative. And that life that you were living when you were a kid, like life's happening, now turns into life's happening to me. It's this whole total story. Yeah. And a lot of us don't feel right. Yeah, so we want to get out of it, but the system is incredible because you're wanting to get out of it reinforces it. Yeah? The biggest in is the desire to get out. So when I try to get out, I'm giving reality to that which I was seemingly in, but it's an imaginary place. How long would it take to escape from an imaginary place? It's already established. How long does it take to get over what's not happening? It's not happening. If you're onto something, one of the qualities of it is going to be timeless. It's not going to take any freaking time to download. It's as if it was always there at all times, and somehow you trip over it. But it's not something that was found. You could say maybe it was discovered, but it was never lost. Yeah, it's like there's an old story by Ramana about the woman who has a beautiful necklace, and then she loses the necklace, seemingly, and she's super bummed out, and she's asked all her friends to help her find the necklace, and they start searching for the necklace. Then they hear about some guy or a woman that is a necklace finder, and so they go to see them, and the guy says, well, keep coming back and you'll learn how to find the necklace, and he's the only one who's found the necklace, and everyone who's following him hasn't found the necklace, and now she's sort of excited. Then she finds the necklace, and she has a huge elation, but in fact, she found the necklace by someone telling her, hey, feel around your neck. And when she felt around the neck, the necklace was there. So she had never actually lost the necklace. But while she was believing she lost it, she was totally bummed out. And when she discovers it, she's in total joy. But was the joy produced by finding it? And the bummed outness produced by losing it? Because it wasn't lost or found. It never gone anywhere. Now, you may not like the invitation, but I think it's pretty clear. What needs to be addressed is the starting point we're assuming to begin from. Not an end point from that point of view, but looking at that point of view, and maybe there's the beginning point. And in that beginning point, there's no need for an end point. You know, I was in recovery in about my 8th year of recovery because the problem's so obvious that any life run on self-will will hardly be a success. You've had a whole experience of it for years, being a drug addict and stuff, yeah? And that any life run on self-will, all this stuff, it makes total sense. But the identification is so stubborn, and if someone's in identification as self, they don't know it, you know? It's like a beautiful hiding place. It's right underneath our nose, yeah? So, and there's a very weird cryptic saying in recovery, which is self can't get out of self. And when I heard that, it explained most of my freaking life from 6 on. I have been trying to escape from that as that. That was the dilemma. The escaping from it reinforced it more and more. So how can you get out of this conundrum? See, if they say, hey, you've got to quit playing God, and that which is playing God hears that, and then tries to apply playing God to quit playing God, isn't that playing God? Ad infinitum. You can't get out once the in is assumed. There's a drive to get out, and that drive to get out reinforces the assumed in. How is one to escape? The great wisdom of no escape is that's the escape. You stop trying to get out of what you're not in, and you stop trying to get into what you're not out of. You've never been out of a moment, then why the hell are you trying to get into the moment? And you've never been in self, so why is there so much effort to get out of self? This is just the horse in front of the cart. It corrects, yeah? And now you have clear direction, and it's just that which was so mystical and trippy becomes obvious, yeah? Like they say, it's the open secret or the gateless gate. And you are what you're looking for. As St. Francis says, what's looking is what you're looking for. It's beautifully clear. He doesn't say who's looking. He says what's looking. What's looking right now. It doesn't say what's looking and in 50 pages of requirements you have to complete to become what you're looking for. What's looking is what you're looking for. And what moment can you stop being what's looking? And you can go like this. You'll never see it because you're what's looking. How could you have a 10-day dissertation on this? It's a freaking invitation. Short and sweet. If the mind hears it, very clean. Yeah? If you hear it, years and years and years. So we call it like throwing the ball over everyone's head, because I've seen a lot of the catchers in the mental state, and they only have about 6-foot length arms and the mitt size, and I know one of these balls is going to get through, and then the reel is going to catch it, and then it's not going to look for itself, it's going to look at what it's not, and in the looking at what it's not, it will get a sense of what it is, which is the seeing. Yeah. You'll get a flavor. You can only find out what you are. You can't know it. It's impossible. You'd have to be something else. So, if this is very short today, you should have come yesterday. It's a long dissertation. As it goes along, they should get shorter and shorter and shorter, because really, yeah. So, if you have any questions.
Is it, I'm wondering if when you die, if this is exactly what the first thing we find out was what you're speaking of. Like most people find that out the second they cross over, or whatever you call it, translate. It's like it was all of it was not who you were, who you thought you were, but you were always there. So you have no problem dying. Once you die, you're going, great, okay, this is who I always have been, and there's no big deal that I died, and I'm in the now, and let's just continue on. It's the living that's the problem, not the dying.
But to who, You can always use that. But see, if at that moment that here and now becomes available, it's this here and now.
Yeah.
So no time has really passed. Like if you watch someone on a path, they want to become awake. But let's say they do all this stuff and things happen, and then there's an awakening experience. It tells them it's always been that way. So did they actually arrive there? In fact, no. Only in time it looked like they got there. But when they seem to have got there, it revealed that it's always been that way. So there was no getting there, yes?
That's right.
Yeah, time is dreaming.
Yeah.
Time is dreaming. Yeah. This whole process, the mental state, it's a robbery in a way. If you listen to it, it's assuming you're a body. When you're thought about as a body. When you're remembered as a body. Yeah? You couldn't remember you 5 years ago unless you were pictured as a body. How are you going to say my spirit 5 years ago? Because it would be exactly the spirit now. There's no 5 years. Yeah. But the body may look different, a little older, got a limp now, stuff like that. You know, put on some weight. So therefore, yes. And without that mental object, the thoughts can't coagulate. You can't be thought about, but the body can be thought about. But what you are can't be thought about. But the body can be thought about, and so it is. So if you watch it, you see it. You can see it. Yeah, you can see the process. If you see 5 minutes of it, it explains the whole thing. It just replicates. But the first movement of the mental states, and I don't know if there's an intention or not, who knows? I don't even care. But the movement is claiming, yeah? So you can see it in our language represented by the word my. My is unbelievable because my changes everything that comes after it. Yeah, so there's money and my money, totally different. I wish you to have a lot of money, but I don't want you to have any of my money. Yeah?
Right.
So the my, everything that comes after it is changed by what's before. That's the role we're in here. As the Course would say, we're giving everything all the meaning it has, yes? We are the dreaming of the dream. We forget that we're dreaming, seemingly, which means it appears to the dreaming that it's forgot that it's dreaming. The only thing that could seem to forget that it's dreaming is dreaming. Yeah? The only thing that allows false evidence to appear real is what's real. How could false evidence appear real? It would have to appear real to what's real. We're dreaming. Yeah? It's not like we're doing it as a volition. We're in. Mind is dreaming. Yeah? So it says in the Course, you and I are the dreaming of the dream. We forget that we're dreaming. And in that condition, we give everything we're dreaming the power to affect us. It sounds like everyone's day here. So you're dreaming thoughts. The thoughts are preceded by my thoughts. Then that thought can own you, can ruin your vacation. One thought can ruin your Hawaii vacation. Yeah? How could that be? You don't see the power that we are. Jesus supposedly raised someone from the dead, but at least Lazarus was alive. We're making shit out of nothing all day. How could next Wednesday affect us now? How could what's not happening have an effect here unless what's happening was entertaining it? We are what's happening. You can't pin it on anywhere else. You can't. You can call it a god or something or a devil, but we're it. Yeah. If you follow, all the roads lead to this. Yeah. The greatest beneficiary of this is what you're not. When the mother hen lifts off the egg of individuality, this does the best. I mean, it gets such a freaking break because it can't handle the weight of being the center of the universe. It really can't handle being thought about all day. It's just it's like a Toyota, you know, it's utilitarian. It cannot handle being seen as the chariot of the gods. It's not. Yeah? It doesn't want to sit 14 hours in a meditation pillow. It doesn't. Have you ever seen meditation retreats? They start out very stoic and there's a lovely little setting, very lot of space with one little pillow. After 4 days, they're like castles of pillows trying to get the ass cheek off because the dominant experience is the body condition. I did one time, 11 days. I did it 21 days, but on the 11th day, they threw a curve. It was beautiful. It was one of those retreats at the upper middle way. Very high-end meditation place with 3 gourmet meals every day. And so at 6 o'clock, they'd feed everybody. And so everyone was roaming around doing walking meditation, you know, on the grounds, the hills. And then they're going to the bell rings, they're going there. And I got there early. And I sat down, and this night they put ice cream on the food buffet. And everyone, they have that lovely, peaceful look. As soon as they saw the ice cream, the fucking retreat was out the window. Some you could see, they got the ice cream first, put it back, then got the mint dinner, then they just bypassed the dinner and just ate ice cream. I mean, it was so hilarious. And they were like, how could you want something that's so freaking fragile? It's got to be more durable than that. Yeah. It's really. I want something that's always available at all times, right where I am, with no requirement necessary. And if there are any requirements, you're making them up. The you that you're not. The only reason why you're beholden to all this stuff is you believe they're yours. If you saw they weren't yours, you would have the ability to lose interest. And that's the whole point. If you, like Dogen, a great Zen master, said, you know, to study Buddhism is to study the self. And to study the self is to forget the self. Because if you study what you're not and you get a sense it's not you, you lose interest in it. And you're fueling the whole trip. The thoughts aren't doing anything. It's the my of the thought that injects the thought with juice. Yeah? Feelings are just our feelings. They come and go. But once you see it. Here's feelings, here's thoughts all day, and actions, yeah? So there's an action. The mental state is sort of like places a tail on the donkey. Mm-hmm. So now, just like this, here's a bottle. Everyone sees the bottle. I can change its intent, which is now it's pointed, it's my bottle. So now the bottle's being used to point to the one who has the bottle. You never see the one who has the bottle, but the pointing is seen quite a lot. So every thought, yeah, my thought. Every feeling, my feeling. And the most dominant, every action coming through this is usually seen as my action. So all of the processes are being used to imply, to assume, to presuppose that there's a someone, a cause, a doer, a thinker, a feeler, all day. That which isn't so has to be constantly reinforced to appear to be so. It's a lot of freaking work. So you don't need, why fight the thought? It's the mind. If you had the same thought stream that drove you crazy today, and underneath it was a ticket tape, this is Stanley's thoughts, it wouldn't have the ability to drive you crazy, as long as you weren't Stanley. Seriously. If you could see it as other than yours, there'd be a huge difference in traveling with it. So what happens? You're bound by what you own. If you own the thoughts, they can own you. That's the deal in a sense, yeah? If all the feelings are cast as your feelings, a feeling can really, really ruin your day. Yeah. But if you just see them as truly what they are, events that come and go, there's a sense of watching the events that come and go that in that seeing of them implies what's always there. Yeah? You get a hit of what you are really by seeing what you're not. Just like when I was in this thing with AA and I saw that self was a foreign installment, yeah? And it was this great sentence I had read thousands of times. It says, being convinced, which means a present state condition, being convinced, that self manifested in various ways is what had defeated us, yeah? So he separated the two, which is mind-boggling. So he separated, there's something called self and us. And self manifested in a lot of ways have defeated us, yeah? We will now look at self's common manifestations, which are resentments, fears, acting out and hurting people in pursuit of what you want, yeah? This is the inventory of recovery. So I saw self was a foreign installment, and as soon as I saw it that way, the next possibility that was always pregnantly available, but not available to me, appeared, which is I can be free from it. That was the horse finally in front of the cart. And it became the last answer, and I never looked for another answer. Because why? Why would I look for an answer if I'm content and satisfied? How much agitation would I be moved by if I was content and peaceful and satisfied? Not much. And you see, the mental state, if you look at Buddhism, the mental state, Buddha said, you know, this malaise and stuff was caused by desire, right? The suffering. But if you see the initial desire, it's in the mental state, and it's the desire to become and unbecome. The mental state, the selfing, this is what I call it, the act of being identified as a self is a verb called selfing. All that verb is the mirror of the mental agitation, because it's always desiring to become something it thinks it's not, or unbecome something it thinks it is. It's never fulfilled. That's why that irritability, restlessness, and discontent becomes the basis. And now you try to put salves on it and ointments, but you never get to the true rash, which is the identification as a self. Because if you did, you'd have relief, stabilized relief. It's like if I have a rash and I believe it's psoriasis, so I buy a lot of psoriasis medicine and I pour it on and I don't get results, but my belief is, oh, it's got to be psoriasis, so I buy more and more, and then I finally open up a little bit. Let me try some other tins, and one tin I put on it and the thing goes away. What do? I read what it was for. It says it was whatever, you know, dermatitis or whatever, yeah? So now I know what was bothering me by the relief. This is the whole point. You know the problem from the solution. You don't know the solution from the problem. You know the problem from the solution. Something, you have relief, and suddenly it tells you why there seemingly wasn't relief. That's the download. This way of learning isn't direct. It's different than the mental logic. Yeah, you find out about what you are by seeing what you're not. And it's seamless. It goes that way the rest of the way. Once it's corrected, there may be no more need for any correction. Now you can just get on with business. And you know, why go to an intensive? Today's intense enough, isn't it? Just a regular freaking Sunday. Because you're confronted like a mountain like that of time, you know? You felt great at 9:05 a.m., but 9:15 you feel pretty sucky. Something's like 9:05, everything's nirvana. 9:20, it's Armageddon. Something's suspicious of that. Yeah, you gotta start seeing what's going on, you know? We're trying to stabilize what can't be stable at the expense of the true stability, which isn't done by any thought or effort. It's being what it is. That's why there's no sweating. What isn't so has to be constantly remembered. Yeah. What is so you cannot possibly forget. You can think you have, and that's the only way it can seem to be. It always comes after thought. Yeah. You think you're separate. You think you're disconnected. You're thinking this, or you're thinking you're getting closer. The thinking makes it all seem to be so, but it's only appearing to be true to you. We're dreaming. Yeah. I mean, as a verb. There's nothing else happening. There's no verbing. You cannot leave the dreaming if you're in this location and then start observing the dreaming. No freaking way. You're in the water. You're totally drenched. And there's no in or out of the dreaming. It's verbing. There's no entrance or exit. It's just always happening. And in a sense, it's always happening and nothing ever happens, really. Because we're the only reality. You're going to go to sleep tonight and none of this is going to have any effect. It's like the Etch-a-Sketch is going to get shook up and then maybe you'll wake up and you'll see the sign will be merry again and you'll be merry for the day. Yeah? And then you get a big break.